Hey, what's going on, roleplayers? It's the Bard here. Welcome back to the corner. Today's video is part 2 of our Call of Cthulhu adventure. If you want to go and see part 1, there'll be a link in the description below. With that being said, let's continue. Following on from part 1, the players may wish to investigate further into the function room after the initial shock of seeing the dead bodies. Nothing about the bodies gives any indication as to their identity. However, it's fairly obvious from looking at them that these were obviously people of great wealth. The women tend to have very expensive jewelry, and the men seem to have very finely tailored suits. Investigators morbid enough or foolish enough to go rifling through corpses will find an invitation welcoming the particular participant to the Overview Hotel to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of its opening. Some of the players may wish to investigate the symbols that have been painted on the walls. Should this happen, if they approach and start to investigate quite thoroughly, they'll start to feel faint and their vision becomes slightly blurred and hazy. Then the soft sound of laughter and talking and music will start to fade in. When the player turns around, they will see what appears to be an ethereal reflection of the time before the incident. There will be a party in full swing. There will be music playing, people will be talking, and it'll all just be slightly hazy. Everyone seems to be enjoying themselves. People are laughing, drinking, enjoying snack food. Sound and visuals, however, will be oddly distorted if you're looking at the scene. The players can cross from their part of the hotel into the hazy distortion, at which point the roles will be reversed. The scene becomes the reality, and everything on the outside seems somewhat out of phase. It's at this point the players may, if they so choose, begin to interact with the reflections of the past. Investigators that cross over into the haze will also find their clothes have changed in order to match their environment, either finely tailored suits or beautifully crafted dresses. The ethereal party, as well as the change in the investigator's attire, should all be part of the same sanity roll. No sanity loss for a successful roll, or perhaps 1d3 if the roll is failed. Players can enter and exit the distortion at any time without any further ill effects. They can do this as often as they choose for the duration. However, eventually the distortion will end and the party will fade out. The investigators now have ample opportunity in order to ask any questions they wish of the guests. However, most of them will only be interested in talking about money and the potential for the investment in the overview. However, if they do decide to work the room a little bit, maybe a successful fast talk roll or a successful credit rating score, they might end up talking with the owner. The owner seems quite happy to talk about his successful business venture. However, his questions and answers do seem to taper off into various anecdotes about the house that stood here before, or about the current hotel and its potential for new growth and development. I think it's just a load of superstitious nonsense. It doesn't matter if there used to be a cult following around this part. That house is gone, and now this hotel stands in its place. After speaking with the owner and discovering that the hotel now sits upon the site that was once the cultist domain that was detailed in the newspaper in Jennifer's room, who should walk into the party but Jennifer herself? Jennifer weaves her way through the crowd, making a beeline for their hotel owner. She looks around the room and spots any investigators currently within the scene. She gives a knowing nod and a smile. She then heads up to the owner. It's at this point the scene starts to fade. Or perhaps a more accurate way to describe it would be the investigators seem to fade from the scene. The investigators will realize that any time they try to interact with someone from this point on, it's almost as if they're not there. The owner greets Jennifer and they start to walk the room. He starts to introduce her to some of the people and talk about what a good investment she's made. As the scene finally begins to fade out, there's a large crash. Everyone looks to the door to the function room. the door bursts open and a number of shadowy shapes enter. Suddenly they're screaming and people are starting to look terrified, and the scene fades out. Jennifer's clothes at the party are the same ones that were covered in blood in her room when the investigators arrived. Also, the investigator's clothing matches that of the sepia photograph that you found earlier. So by now, the player characters should have come to the realization that they've already been here. They just have no recollection of it. At this point in the adventure, you're probably thinking that you put 2 and 2 together and you can realize what happened to Jennifer. Her clothes, torn, bloody, the scene that played out before them. It seems pretty straightforward. But this is just the misdirection. Let the investigators follow this train of thought if they want to. However, if anyone brings up the question as to why her clothes were upstairs and she's not down in the function room, then at least it shows that they're putting in some thought. Don't worry, the answers will reveal themselves in due course. If the investigators want to continue searching around the hotel, then they can try to cross-reference some of the names of the guests to the names in the register. Most of the people here in the function room will still have their key on them. In fact, these are the only people who were staying at the overview this night, due to the special event. However, if the investigators do decide to go and look in their rooms, they won't find anything that is valuable. At least not valuable to their investigations. Any information they do get from the rooms is probably the same information they got whilst viewing the scene. Wealthy people, stock investors, investment bankers, that kind of thing. There's only one difference after the scene fades. Should anyone go down to check the basement, they'll find that the door, which was locked from before, has an eerie glow about it, a yellowish hue, and a number of symbols. If your investigators have been down to the basement already and tried to check out around there, then they would have found the door locked with no seeming way to open it. Again, this will come into play later in the adventure, so don't worry about it too much for now. Just be aware that it's there and it's another clue. By now there isn't very much the investigators can do in the hotel anymore. There aren't any more clues for them to find, so it's probably time for them to leave. Scene 4 becomes a little bit more open-ended. They have multiple clues to follow, so they might want to go to the asylum to check out Charlie and see what he has to say, or perhaps do some investigation into this unusual medical certificate they have with Jennifer's name on it. Or they might like to take a trip into the foothills to investigate this curious cave that was read about in the newspaper in Jennifer's room. For the most part, a lot of players tend to think practically, so they'll probably decide they'll want to visit the cave, since it isn't too far away from the hotel site, a couple of hours walk into the foothills. It's a fairly brisk walk to the caves. The already trampled path has been walked many times by curious locals who'd read about it in the papers. After the police investigation, the caves have become somewhat of a local legend, with signposts and the like, directing people who wanted to go and visit it. If you would rather, you could always not include the signpostings and just have the player characters try to navigate their own way, using their navigate skill. Either way, eventually they will get to the caves. When the investigators approach the caves, they'll see the ground around it is all worn away. It seems that a lot of people have already been in here. As they make their descent into the caves, they'll have to take some source of light with them. A torch or even a pocket lighter will be sufficient. As noted before, the cave holds a number of depictions of ancient civilizations. However, on closer inspection, now that the investigators have had a chance to see it for themselves, they'll notice that it's not just one or two, but many civilizations. It seems to go through a multitude of times. A successful anthropology roll will reveal the civilizations present in the cave. For the benefit of this scenario, we've used ancient Egypt, medieval England, and 1920s America. You should include as many civilizations as you think will make your game interesting, but this is probably enough for you to be going along with. The one curious thing in every depiction is that there are a number of these draconic looking images, the same as the one in Jennifer's tablet in her room. If the players look around, they'll see that these curious winged creatures will be present in every depiction, almost as if they've been here before and kept returning. Some of these draconic depictions aren't immediately obvious. Some of them are quite small, they fade into the background. But if you look carefully for them, you will find that they're there. What will happen then, the players will see, as you describe it, that they are all around, within every depiction, and that many of these rituals and death rites are being conducted under the watchful eyes of the winged beasts. By now the realization should have set in. They've been here before, and they'll come here again. Give the investigators one last spot hidden roll. Amidst the symbols and the nonsense, if the players are successful in their spot hidden roll, they'll be able to make out one distinctly carved sentence. The sentence says, Migo, the fungi of Yugoth. The plot thickens, as they say. Hopefully you've enjoyed this and you want to see the final conclusion. If that's the case, I suggest you like, comment and subscribe, and then I will see you guys next time at the gaming table.